Well, welcome in, everyone. I'm R.C. McBride. We appreciate you taking some time to join us on this round of film session. And it's my pleasure to be joined by Redbird great Katie Broadway. How are you, Katie?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking and thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, Katie, of course, had a storied career as part of the Illinois State women's basketball program, one of the 28 members of the 1,000 Point Club, four postseason appearances in 4 years, still second all time in career three-pointers, just behind Christy Cerrone. All sorts of a two-time all conference in the Missouri Valley, and you played under a couple of great coaches in Robin Pinchton and Stephanie Glantz. So looking back, I'm sure you have some moments, and we're going to get to one of them here in a bit, but you have some favorite memories about your time at Illinois State?
Oh, probably too many to count or talk about. It's so fun to just be able to reminisce and think about those big moments that happened. But I think just the one thing that I always remember and go back to is just those celebratory moments that I've had with teammates. In games with coaches, and just how all the hard work that we did off season and even during season. It's a grind, and so it just makes it all worth it. And to have those celebratory moments with teammates and friends, and those teammates and even coaches have become friends in later life. Still being able to talk to them and hang out and kind of get together. That's something really special that I think a lot of teams and people go through in athletics that they don't always get. But also, weirdly, some of my favorite moments are just practices. We had some really difficult, tough practices, which I think, helped with our success. But I just always remember certain drills that we did that as soon as, Coach P or Coach Glantz said what the drill name was, we all were like, oh no. But afterwards, it was just like so fun because it was our chance to get after it and get after each other. But then the moment the drill was over, we knew like we cared more about each other than anything, and we were friends, and then we can just go on. So when I kind of look back on moments and things, it's little things like that kind of bring a smile to my face.
That's fantastic to hear. And maybe if you could tell folks a little bit about what you're up to these days.
Sure, I'd love to. So I think since college, I've kind of been like, I feel like my life's been a little bit of a pinball in a pinball machine, just kind of bouncing around, kind of figuring out what I'm going to do. I got into coaching right after I graduated and went down to University of Alabama, Birmingham with Coach Randy Norton. And he's still down there doing an excellent job. And I was down there for about 2 years, kind of getting my start and kind of learning the ropes of behind the scenes. And I'll tell you, I never, ever understood so much work went into just running a basketball program. And being down there had a new change of utmost respect for all coaches and operations workers and everything that I ever played under. But after that, I got a offer to be an assistant coach at McKendree University, which kind of brought me back closer to my hometown, which was really fun. My dad actually played at McKendree University and basketball there, which was kind of a neat thing to kind of go. But I coached under alongside of Kerry Kirkhoff, who was an assistant coach at Bradley at the time. So when I played, and we had some fun back and forth and jabs when we were coaching together, which was kind of fun to just continue to talk about the NBC rivalry with Bradley. But after coaching there for about 2 years, I decided to get out and get into the marketing field and kind of find my way there. And so eventually have led to moving to Chicago. And so I've been in Chicago for about a year and a half now and absolutely love it. As you know, I'm a big Cubs fan. And so being really close to Wrigley has been great. I think I went to about 12 or 15 games last season, which was super fun. And just being able to be right there. And I guess now with no sports this year, I am glad that I went to that many last year.
Well, we're thrilled to hear that you're doing so well, and yeah, I'm a titch envious of you being that close to Wrigley Field. The games will return for all of us someday. We just need to hang in there.
Exactly.
Well, we want to focus a little bit on a game in March of 2010. And if I can be personal for just a second, I've called a lot of games on radio or TV in 20 plus years. I'm not quite at the Dick Ludke or Greg Hallbleib total number just yet, but it's a pretty high number. And this game is still my all-time favorite. It was just a terrific atmosphere. It was a lot of fun, and certainly we enjoyed the result. And I was just in preparation for this, listening to the broadcast that Jill Hutchison and I did together, and wow, it was really a lot of fun. So let's talk about the WNIT semifinal game going back to March of 2010. Hard to believe it's been 10 years. But maybe talk about some of the lead up to that game, because I know my memory is that there was a lot of expectations of that team. There'd been some injury problems, yourself included, but the goal was to go to the NCAA tournament. So I'm not sure that the WNIT was necessarily everyone's end goal, but the excitement really started to build. So what's your recollection?
Absolutely. Wow, 10 years, that stings a bit. But yeah, like you said, this was my sophomore year, and there was a lot of expectations for this team, and we had high expectations for ourselves. We've worked, I remember after my freshman year, we went to the Final Four WNIT, played at Kansas, and lost there. And that really just fueled our fire to, we should have made the NCAA tournament, that year, and we didn't. And so that was our main goal. That was our main focus. And we worked really hard that off season and preseason, and some injuries happened. And I, myself included, I broke my wrist. I think it was like the third official practice, and I was just devastated for many reasons. After you work so hard to do all these things, and then it's just boom, an injury can happen and just change the course. And I remember it happening, and I think the most thing that I was devastated about was not being able to play with that particular team. And like I said, this team was really special to me for a lot of reasons. The upperclassmen really just showed me a lot of leadership coming in as like a lone freshman. I learned so much about teamwork and how, everybody has a certain role to play, and that's what makes us successful. And these were leaders who got after me more than anybody has ever gotten after me in my life, and coaches as well. But I also knew like they were pushing me and challenging me every day to be better, because they ultimately cared about me more than anybody. And I never had a doubt about that. And so the thought of not being able to play with them just, like I said, devastated me. And I remember getting the cast on, it's giant cast, and they were, saying like, you could redshirt because you're going to miss pretty much the whole, non-conference part of the year. And I had people saying, you should redshirt. You don't want to like waste a half a year. You could have this all back and get back. And I was like, absolutely not. Like I didn't want to miss playing with that team. Just what we had was so special in those seniors. So I decided not to. And I remember working out every day with Rourke by myself, which was, terrifying in itself. But I got back into shape, and I was able to still shoot somehow with my cast. I think just the way I shot. So I was able to really work on my threes and do what I can to where when it came off, I could help the team. And so eventually I got back and started playing, and throughout that year, the team was doing really well. But we played Illinois earlier in that year, and it was a big game because it was like one of the first times in a long time, I think Illinois finally would play us, or had that matchup. And so it was a really big game for us. And we wanted to really prove that we could compete with the Big Ten. And I think we ended up losing that game, and everybody was a little bit down, but again, it just kind of fueled the fire. And so then conference came, and I was able to come back and play. we had a great conference year, and, you know, once again, we should have, you know, executed in the conference tournament, and we didn't. And that happens sometimes. And I remember being in St. Louis in the hotel lobby of everybody just was so defeated and looked down, and we knew we were going to get in the WNIT, but again, it wasn't something we were like, yes, which is not to say anything about, like, it's such an honor to get invited to the WNIT, but we had that expectation of this is what we should do. And we already did the WNIT Final Four, like, it's our turn, and we were just down. And so I remember the first, like, practice coming back after we found out we were getting in the WNIT, and Coach B could definitely feel it. Like, none of us were, like, in it. None of us were really, like, competing. And she, you know, brought us in and really kind of let us know, like, this is important, and, you know, is this how you want to go out? And all of us kind of looked at each other, and we were like, you know, you're right. Like, this team is really special. We didn't get what we wanted, but that's not to say, like, let's go win this WNIT. Like, let's make a run. So it kind of just, like, really changed the course of our mindset there, of making that, you know, our next goal, which was difficult to do. But as you kind of said, as games kind of led on, it really started to build, and we were winning, and that excitement for us, because we weren't ready to let that team end and be over. I know I for sure wasn't. So yeah, that's kind of how I felt kind of leading up to it. Sorry, I went on a rant.
No, it's all great stuff. And so let's put a little context to the game itself. And you've already done some of that, but, you know, Illinois has already beaten you once this year and again. And Illinois, as I recall, that season also had its own expectations, you know, and I think they were in a very similar situation where now they're in the WNIT, and now we're winning, and we're going to make the best of this thing. So we're playing at Redbird Arena. The lead up to this game was just tremendous. In fact, the crowd at the time for the game was the second largest in Illinois State women's basketball history. It was a fantastic atmosphere. And you talk about your teammates, and, you know, I'm looking at the box score. You know, the starting lineup was you, Ashleen Bracey, Nicole Lewis, Maggie Crick, and Amanda Clifton. I mean, that's a pretty impressive starting lineup. You had players like Alexis Jenkins, Emily Hanley, Shayla Jackson, who came in off the bench. That's how deep that team was. So it was a good Redbird team. Game starts, Illinois takes an early lead. Illinois State takes the lead back about halfway through the first half. We were still playing halves in women's basketball back then. And never gave up the lead, although it was tied 4 times until late. Illinois retakes the lead with a little under 2 minutes to go. And Illinois State comes charging right back. Do you remember much about that end of the end of the game leading up to your shot that would put the Redbirds ahead?
I do. And like you said, it was a battle. It was a back and forth of, nobody could take a possession off, like, because it was too close. But I do kind of remember vividly, for some reason, I remember it getting down to the wire and being out there. And at the time, like, I remember somebody shot, I think it was Maggie, and Maggie never misses her shot ever. But I remember, for some reason, I crashed the offensive board really hard, and I wasn't really known as being, like, a big rebounder my sophomore year at the time, because I was, you know, out at the 3-point line. But I remember it bounced off of the back of the rim really high, and I charged in and grabbed it, and got us another possession and kicked it back out. And I think we were just working it around. And if I'm recalling it right, I think that's what led up to it. And I remember the ball coming to me, and I dished it into Nicole, and my girl went off on her and double teamed, which I'm sure she was really got a talking to after that. But Nicole, like, leaned back, and she was double teamed hard. And I will say, I think I've told this to Nicole Lewis a million times, I've never met a better post player who passes the ball out to shooters. I mean, she was just tremendous at it. And so she passed it right back out and found, and I just didn't even hesitate. And I shot it up.
Well, let's take a moment to relive it.
Illinois State, 22 seconds for the game.
Plenty of time.
Now it's Broadway, wide open three. Got it! Birds by 2. Timeout, Illinois. Shot of the year right there for Katie Broadway.
Still one of my favorite memories from all the years I've been covering Illinois State athletics. What do you remember? There was still a little time left, but you held on. Illinois State held on. Huge celebration. What do you remember about the immediate aftermath of that game?
I did. I remember I didn't really show a lot of emotion when I played, and everybody always kind of made fun of me for it, because if I hit a big shot or something, I would just always do this little fist bump and like celebrate in my head. But I remember it still wasn't that big, but I remember just like hearing, as soon as the ball went in, that hearing the crowd was like electrifying, like through my body. Like it just, and hearing the sound clip now, and it's, again, it feels the same. I think I get the same chills and like feeling that I had then, but it was just like the shot through my body of, I just remember like bouncing back. I don't know. I was like bouncing up and down to the half court. And I remember Ashleen Bracey and Amanda Clifton were just charging at me. And Ashleen like grabbed me, but we still talk about it. We were joking about it, I don't know, not recently, after a picture kind of circulated, and she just grabbed me but hit my stomach so hard, like slap. And I had like a big handprint on my stomach, like after the game and stuff. It hurt so bad, and then everybody was just so excited. And then I remember Maggie was excited too, but she was like, guys, we still have to play. Like there's still time. Like, I just think none of us knew really what to do at this time. It was just so like, oh my gosh, what happened? And but then we had to like regroup and know that, okay, there's still time on the clock, and we're only up by 2. We gotta get a stop. So
Well,
1. Was it 1?
Yeah, it was. I believe, if my memory serves me now, that there was only one Illinois possession remaining after that, and they missed, and you held on. So just a terrific memory. And I know that clip is still part of the hype video that the women's basketball team uses as they're getting ready to have the lineup announced to the crowd to this day. And I know that whenever I'm there and I hear that, it brings that play brings a smile to my face every time. And I'm honored just to have been a teeny tiny part of it. And I know I'm not alone. A lot of Redbird fans still talk about that game and that play.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. That's fun that team can kind of live on in the future of Redbird women's basketball history.
Katie Broadway, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm so glad to be a part of this, and excited to see what Illinois State women's basketball has to offer. Thanks, RC. Thanks for having me on today. It was a blast to walk down memory lane with you. Special shout out to Adam Kopp for putting this all together and inviting me to come on and speak with you today. It really means a lot. Thank you to our fans. You guys are the absolute best. I've always said that we have the best fans in the NBC, and I don't think that's changed. Without you guys, these games and special moments aren't even possible. So thank you so much for all of your support, and go Redbirds.